given a name to my pain. The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill
The Bat of Gotham.
You don't really think you'll win, do you?
I'm Batman.
Hello and welcome to episode 149 of the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is the sponsor as well as a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. Check out all the shows over at batmanpodcastnetwork.com and follow our Twitter at BatPodNetwork. If you're listening to us on iTunes, if you take the time to rate and review the show, we'll read it on the air. BOF is also now on Patreon. If you like what we do here at BOF, whether it's the podcasts, vlogs, or the website itself, and you want to help support us if you're so inclined, please head over to patreon.com/BatmanOnFilm and sign up. I'm the host of the BOF podcast, Ryan Haas, and on tonight's show, we are going to catch up a little bit with DC news and then have an in-depth discussion about the animated adaptation of Batman Hush, the newest entry in the DC Universe movie continuity. To do all that, we have our full crew of Eric Holzmann, Garret Grev, and Ryan Lauer. How are you doing, guys?
Hey, hey.
Here we go.
Happy Taco Tuesday.
It is Taco Tuesday. It's been a while, too, since
Yes.
we've had a show together. And part of it is on us, but a part of it's because Bill went rogue and did like 2 shows with this guy named Michael Uslan.
Who does he think he is?
He did it around Comic-Con, so if you haven't listened to those shows, I'm sure you have, but everybody hasn't listened to those shows, go back and listen to them. It's always interesting to hear somebody like Uslan talk about anything really, but comic books and Comic-Con this year, and because this Comic-Con was less focused on brand new movie news and stuff, on the DC side at least, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on with Batman's 80th this year, so those were some good episodes to cover that, and those got split up as episode 148 part 1 and 2, so this is 149. If the last show that we were all on, or that we did, was 147, and we teased an upcoming show about and if you've been following us on Twitter, we've been teasing a show about the Arkham games. And just an update on that, we did record that show. It's a super long show. It's like 3 hours long. And so the plan is to split that up into 2 shows so you don't have a giant show and that's hard to get through on your feed. But since we're so close to episode 150 and it's taken a little bit longer to edit, we're going to do this show first, and then we're going to have episode 150, which is kind of a milestone episode, and then we'll probably release the Arkham episodes. So that's just kind of where the podcast is going for the next couple of shows.
So if you've been waiting patiently, just keep waiting because it's worth it. In the little the siren, bum 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 bum. I think we got more of those in that one too.
Yeah. So I guess like if you follow the BOF continuity of podcasts, just keep in mind that episode was recorded before this and before 148, which is important because in the continuity that we recorded that show before me and Lauer met each other in person. Was that correct? Yeah. So me and Lauer met each other. That was fun.
It happened. Yeah. That happened. Yeah. We ate burgers. We ate fries. You ate some kind of jalapeno.
We ate burgers. We had burgers and beer at a restaurant that was called Burgers and Beer.
Burgers and Beer.
Yeah, aptly named.
The exact location was like, hey, what you got? And I said, there's a burger and beer place. And you're like, sweet, what's it called? And Burgers and Beers. They don't want to confuse anybody. And it was the only thing in the area. So
and it was packed.
Yeah. So we lucked out that it was actually good and not scary.
Yeah.
And yeah. We talked about life. We talked about how much we love Garret, how much we hate Eric. And
yes.
Might have said something about Batman. Who knows?
How many people, how can Rick Shue keep up with his vigorous plan of just texting and calling everybody? all day, every day.
Yeah, and crazy enough, we were both wearing flip-flops.
And Batman shirts. Was I wearing flip-flops?
I don't know. I didn't look at your feet.
I could have been.
Sorry. Next time
you looked at his feet. Don't lie. You're in now. Yeah. Don't back out.
He actually had black tennis shoes on and
Birkenstocks.
Birkenstocks.
You guys should have gone up to the counter and ordered the Vichyssoise and just tried to see what the reaction was on their faces at Burgers and Beers. It's supposed to.
That should be a BOF shirt. It's like Vichyssoise and Alfred and the quote. It's supposed to be cold.
Did you not see the sign? It's Burgers and Beer, not Burgers and Beer and Vichyssoise.
But I thought it might be like a weekly special or something.
Curses.
But you did show me something very interesting on your phone.
Hey, that doesn't make it better. That doesn't clear it up at all.
That doesn't make it better. Nope.
And we're just gonna leave it there.
Yep.
No. You showed me and told me this great fun story about your adventure with something related to the Dark Knight.
Yeah. So I work in Chicago, in the city, and I'd realized I'd always thought for some reason that the old Chicago post office, the one that serves as the bank for the bank robbery at the beginning of the Dark Knight, I always thought it was much further from my work than it actually is. So finally one day I decided to wait until it was a 95-degree day for some smart reason. I walked to the old Chicago post office and I took some pictures. I took some pictures from where the goons zip line across on the outside. Well, they're doing construction on it. And Garrett and Eric, I don't think you guys know this. I've told you this story. And so I'm walking up, and I was kind of bummed because I knew that it wasn't in service. Like the building isn't open, like a business anymore or anything. But they were doing construction on it, and they had like some green fence construction gate. So I'm walking along it, and all of a sudden there's this clearing, and it might be the section that Gordon actually walks up into. And there's this woman crossing the street, and she just looked like very casual, just across the street and just going up the steps. So I just act like I'm looking down at my phone, and I just follow her, and she goes through the doors. So I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll go through the doors. So I go in through the doors, but by that point, I'd seen there's a security guard sitting there, and he's talking to her. But in the meantime, she'd grabbed a construction hat and continued walking through. So at that point, I realized that she actually worked there. And at that point, when I realized that, the security guard looked at me. So I held my phone up quick and I snapped a picture inside the lobby. And then I took off running out the door. But I got my picture inside the Gotham Bank. And so check that off the bucket list.
Nice.
You old sneaky fella, you.
I know. I broke the law. Nice. I sweat a lot because it was hot. But
it's not a law. That's like I don't know.
Yeah, if you're waiting for a bigger and then something came crashing through and it was
the school bus came,
school bus, and I jumped on it and I shot.
Then I shot the driver. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. None of that happened, but still, yeah, I saw that. It happened.
That's pretty sweet.
That's cool.
You know what? It is cool,
and I'm proud of you.
Good.
And I got to share that story in person with my friend Ryan Haas.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get to meet more people sometime soon.
Someday.
We're definitely going to have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
One of these watch parties or something.
Yeah.
But cool. So let's get into some light DC news type talk. Today, the main thing we're talking about, of course, is the Batman Hush animated feature, which has been out for a couple weeks on digital, but today, Tuesday, the 6th, August 6th, we're recording this, is when it came out on physical media, so seemed like the best time to do it. But something else came out today, which was pretty timely, which was a teaser trailer for Season 2 of Titans. Did you guys watch this teaser trailer?
Indeed.
I did watch it.
Nice. And everybody on the show has watched Season 1 of Titans, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Indeed.
And I think some of us have talked. We talked about this a little bit on one of the other shows, but I was pleasantly surprised by season 1 of Titans. I thought it was not going to be good, but after actually giving it a shot and watching it, I was like, okay, I'm down with this show. It was good.
Yeah, none of the first trailer that dropped last Comic-Con, I was not impressed.
Yeah, all the marketing was just like abysmal for that show. Like I thought it looked terrible. It made me scared and stuff. But like watching it, it was way better than you imagined.
Which is, I think it just has the power of DC for me, because anything else that I am not in any way won
jazzed.
over, I just don't.
You're just not even going to give it a shot.
No.
Yeah.
But this was kind of like, I don't know. I want to see Robin in his suit. I don't know, something about that. Just like, sure, I'll give that a shot. And then, because I'm not necessarily, I don't have anything against Titans. I'm just not a massive Titans fan. So
yeah,
I just gave it a shot. And after that first episode, I was like, okay, this is all right. And then as the show went on, I think it got better and better. And had some really standout episodes and moments to where I was like, sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the only weird thing was that the season didn't really feel complete because it kind of had an abrupt ending.
Exactly.
But it had some cool stuff in it, like where you got to see kind of Batman from the back, not the face or anything, but you got to see Batman stuff. It was kind of interesting.
I wish that sometimes I kind of wish that we weren't so involved like we are, because let's say like 9-year-old me, who shouldn't have been watching that show anyway.
No,
9-year-old me sees Batman, like a silhouette or just from the back and stuff. I'd have been so impressed and jazzed. Whereas watching it now, it's kind of like, oh, of course we're not going to see his face because they're not going to let that happen.
Well, they're loosening up because, let's talk about the season 2 trailer. So it just looks... it looks bigger, bolder. It looks like they are definitely going. It already looks from this footage like that they're embracing the comic bookiness of stuff a lot more in this season. From what it seems like, there's a bunch of people in suits. It's a little bit. It's still dark, but it's more colorful and saturated at the same time. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of characters. Like a lot of new characters as well.
It teases the growth of the cast as well. So you see Beast Boy he looks a little older. Raven has more of the look,
the comic book aesthetic a little bit.
Right. So it does that. We see Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
We get Ian Kane. What's his name?
Sir Jorah Mormont.
Yes, it's Sir Jorah.
Yes.
Yes.
Bear Island.
We see him, and they tease some kind of old versus new Titans.
Ian Glenn.
Yeah,
right.
There you go.
Yeah. Which that's the biggest news for a Batman on film person to know is that we're getting a Bruce Wayne on a live action Bruce Wayne in Titans season 2, and it's Ian Glenn. Yeah. Which I don't know. I thought, man, he'd make a great Alfred,
right?
Just because of he's like Scottish and stuff like that, and I just, but it's interesting. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with him.
Yeah.
So like his accent, I was already kind of like listening to it in the trailer, like, okay, does it sound like he could be Batman? I guess he sounds like kind of like Batman, but I don't know. I'm not super sold. But that's just a clip, just like and I'm, not going to prejudge it based off of how the last season went, so it could be cool. I mean, he could definitely pull it off, and I guess it depends on what they have him doing. Unless it's just going to be like, obviously he's not going to be the main focus of the season or anything like that. But I'm very interested to see how that whole thing will play out.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a little bit of Dove too.
Yep.
So we got a little bit. I mean, it seems they're picking up right where last.
Oh yeah, they're gonna have to. Yeah.
Yeah, because it ended kind of at a weird, like you said, at a weird point.
Yeah.
And they teased something else, so we're gonna have to see how that comes about.
Yeah, they teased Crypto and Superboy, which both of those got teased in the last season. But they also showed Deathstroke at the end of that trailer, which was like, ooh, a very Justice League-esque looking Deathstroke shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of the like saunter up to the camera out of the shadow a little bit. I got the same vibe. And it had to be, I mean, you imagine it's probably intentional. These people are aware of, what's been out there and what's been seen before. So, I mean, maybe just a little bit of a cool callback and nothing more than that.
Yeah, we'll see. So, I mean, it comes out, it's like 1 month from today. So, September 6th, it'll just be out, So,
yes. And I will be reviewing it again. So
Nice.
I will be back on the reviews for Batman on Film.
Great.
And who did they tease as the villain?
Slade.
That was odd. I watched that the other day again, the movie.
Oh, man. My
Before
daughter
or
is
after
so
Boogie
into that
Nights?
movie right now.
It was good. I reviewed that too, ironically enough, for Batman on Film. But yeah, that was I enjoyed that movie too.
I think that excites me too of bringing him in because he is more of originally was an adversary. Correct me if I'm wrong. Of the Teen Titans.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yes.
And I'm just happy of like it's an actual person, and it's not like he needs digital effects to him or anything. It's an actual person doing straight up fighting. And someone like him doing straight up fighting against the Titans is going to be sweet.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. We'll see. And here's a segue for you. So we were talking about live action Batman, but that's not or live action Bruce Wayne. But that's not the only live action Bruce Wayne we're going to get.
Oh boy.
In the imminent future. Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, I know you haven't seen this on the internet, but let me tell you that Kevin Conroy, yes, that Kevin Conroy will indeed be a live action Bruce Wayne in the upcoming Crisis crossover on the DCCW crossover shows.
They're going to get me to do it. They're going to get me to watch. They always find a way.
Insane.
I always find a way. I always, this is what happens with me in the CW shows. I watch, I enjoy it for a while, I start to enjoy less, I quit watching, and I'm like, well, I think I'm probably just done with those. And then they make some announcement about a crossover, and they pull me back in just for the cycle to repeat itself.
Just like comic books themselves.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Is this the third or a fourth crossover?
Fourth?
I think it's the fourth one.
I think.
Last year's crossover was the first one that I really actually enjoyed. Because out of them, because I'm so not in the loop with, with Legends or Supergirl.
Well, Legends wasn't even in part of last
year's. Yeah, and so I think last year's was just the three of Flash, Arrow, Supergirl.
And they introduced Batwoman.
Yeah, yes. So it's like that's what been my turnoff for it. But then, like Garrett had said, they say this, and I'm like, well, I need to watch every single episode of the crossover because who knows how much. Which in the end, probably it's going to be like a 1 minute only in some episode. But yeah, I have to see it. I gotta see it.
Or in just the context, because they were going because this is going to be the one to watch this crossover. Because last year they did some awesome stuff. They brought, John Wesley Shipp they've had on as different characters in the Flash, and including Jay Garrick of the Flash. But last year they brought him back as the 1990s Flash, which was awesome to see. But it's like fan service in the best way possible to be able to be like, okay. Again, they've had like Mark Hamill on as well.
They're gonna have Burt Ward
as Trickster. Yeah, they're gonna have Burt Ward in Batwoman. I don't know what role he's gonna play, but he's gonna be in there in some capacity.
He's not squeezing into those tights.
Oh God, no,
that's not happening.
But to have Kevin Conroy be an older Bruce Wayne in this crossover, that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
And Brandon Routh, right?
And Brandon Routh's gonna be Superman again. Jeez,
I was gonna say there's one other one that
you'd think that would be like the biggest thing that would jump out, but then they say Kevin Conroy's gonna be Bruce Wayne, and you're like, well, damn. So like that's crazy, and it's at the natural stopping point where like it's gonna be part of the ending crescendo of Arrow because it's Arrow's last season. So the crossover will end up being like episode 8 of Arrow. And then there's like 2 more episodes of Arrow after the crossover. So it's a lot of storylines kind of wrapping up for the first time, or show, like a major show is like finishing. And I think they've even said that Black Lightning is going to be in this crossover as well, which is also significant because that's the only show that hasn't crossed over at all. So that should be fun. I mean, don't discount those DCCW shows because they are doing some great work in keeping DC stuff alive. And you know, you want your connected universe. There it is. I mean, they can do all the crazy interconnected cosmic comic book cameo fan service type stuff that you like in comic books, but they just do it on TV, and they're doing a great job with it. So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't really watched The Flash much. The only one I still religiously watch is Arrow. But yeah, I mean, if you like that, like you said, if you like that stuff, if you like that, the shared universe, and you like having the shows, you know, cameos in some episodes just during the season, and then you have obviously the crossovers. It's great. You get all that there. And I know some people complain about the writing and say, "Oh, but I mean, it's television."
Yeah.
It has a specific target audience.
Yep.
So, you know, it's a little bit different.
They have, which is funny because like, it's not like film has infinite parameters versus TV. They each have their own things that they have to play to, right? And so do comic books. Each medium, really, when you think about it, has their things that they have to focus on. So it's just a different form of storytelling. And yeah, you're only going to get so much based on the medium, which kind of leads into Hush. This Hush animated feature, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue.
Yeah, I didn't even plan it, but it's true.
No,
so
it just came organically. That's the best. It just happens organically.
Yeah. So Batman Hush is out. When this got announced, I was pretty excited just because I've said this on some shows before. I think if you even go back in the archive and listen to, I think one of the Batman, we did like a 3-part Batman Day show a couple of years ago, and one of our topics was like, what's your favorite Batman story? And I think I picked Hush. Like, I don't think it's the best Batman story, but man, it's up there as a favorite for a lot of reasons, just because it, you know, I think if somebody says like, you can't judge a story based on how it makes you feel or your personal thoughts, and I say like, what the hell? Of course you can. That's like the whole point. Like, if you're not judging it off of that, then why are you even experiencing the media? So part of the context of Hush for me is that it's solely responsible for making me a weekly, monthly, regular continuity comic book reader. You know, you know, it came on around the perfect time. It was 2003 or 2002 or whatever when it came out. I had just been getting comics here and there, back issues or whatever. But that was the first time where it was like this big event for me in terms of, and I was the right age to actually like be able to afford comic books every month or week when they came out and follow and actually understand what was going on with continuity and follow stuff. And Jim Lee, it was just a big deal. Like, it was a really big deal when it was coming out, and each issue, it was like a serialized thing. It was 12 issues, right? Or 13 or something like that. And every month it was just like, okay, well, what's going to happen this month? What's going to happen this month? And the story featured so many Batman villains and so many characters. And so it's like I've heard it referred to as like the Michael Bay, like Batman story, just because it's big, it's big, it's bombastic. It has all the characters. It has everybody. It's a crowd pleaser. And there's like mystery elements and stuff, but I mean, it's not as like twisty and turny and stuff as Jeff Loeb, the writer, as some of his other stuff like Long Halloween or whatever. But still, it's a really strong story, and it sets up Hush. Some of the feature stories with Hush, like Heart of Hush, like some of the stuff that Paul Dini has done, those are strong. Those are better stories and stronger stories. But I still can't discount like what the original Hush did for me as a Batman fan, and I think that's one reason why I think it's still up there in terms of like my favorites, because it's just a fun experience. It's a good experience. On the experience level, it's really, really high. So when they announced this as an animated feature, I was like, okay. Like, some of the stories, I don't know. Like, when they said year one, I thought maybe, well, I don't know how that's going to translate. And that one's one of the ones that I always go back to where I think like they was too literal of a translation, so it kind of didn't work as good as it could have. Dark Knight Returns, I think, is still, at the pinnacle of translating these things.
Yeah.
But I was very curious to see like what they would do with Hush, like how faithful they'd be, or like how different they'd be. So, what are your guys' thoughts on, before we get into the movie itself, non-spoilery for the movie, but just in general of like Hush as a story, like in the comic book version?
Well, I remember when I first saw, and I think it was the first time I heard that Jim Lee was going to be doing Batman, there was I don't know, maybe a 5-page preview in Wizard magazine.
In Wizard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I opened that and I was just like blown away. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you mean like X-Men, Wildcats, Jim Lee? And I had been, out of probably weekly buying comic books at that point too for a little bit. So I wasn't even really all that familiar that he was making or had made the move at that point to DC. And seeing him draw Batman was just like a mind blower for me. So I was immediately intrigued and hooked, and went and got the issues and read it and was amazed, and I loved it. I think as years went by, I sort of had the same assessment of the story where it's maybe not as intricate, but man, was it designed and crafted to highlight Jim Lee, and the pages that he was able to draw was just fantastic. So I loved all of that in every way, and it's always been one of my favorite Batman stories, even though it's not the deepest story. So when they announced it was going to be and they had talked about whether or not this was going to be a movie for some time, and I think it was Bruce Timm that said, I don't know, I think it could be a TV series. It probably works better in comics. But then, I think as the years went by and they're looking for source material, they announced this was going to be a movie, and I was beyond thrilled. And then when they said it was going to be in this sort of DC animated universe continuity of the several films that have been now, I was kind of bummed out. It's like I really wanted it to be a standalone sort of like separate take. I didn't love some of the I always think of it as like the animated New 52 verse. It didn't really want it. Yeah, I didn't really want it connected to that, and without getting into
than
it.
The New 52.
Yes, it has. I think it's probably been a little bit better received in some levels, but I was very excited for it all the same. Couldn't wait to watch it. Got it on digital, and excited to talk about it.
Cool. What about you, Lauer?
Well, kind of like how you said, alluded to with the comic story of how it is, I think, definitely one of Batman's most popular stories. I don't think it's necessarily one of the best, but it is one that I reread close to the most. It's not, aside from a few others, because I just think that it's a really fun story. I think Haas, you and I are like the same age. So when this, I was from a small town that didn't have a comic shop or comics. I couldn't drive yet.
My comics shop, here's my thing. So my comic shop at the time, was located in a storage unit. What? That was two storage units that were kind of rented out, and it was behind Central Park, which was a drive-through fast food restaurant. So you kind of had to like go to Central Park and get your like feed two for $5 meal deal, and then you kind of go around to this storage unit and just kind of lift it up, and they're kind of like, oh hey, it's the comic book store.
Oh my gosh. No, I didn't have it.
It's the first time I got like a subscription, and it was interesting.
Put it on the pull list.
Yeah. So the closest availability for comics was like a 10 to 15 minute drive. And then I wasn't able to do that until I could start driving, in which then I started working, and this shop, like this music store in the back, they started to sell graphic novels. And that's where I first saw The Long Halloween. Then I saw Dark Victory. And then the next one was this book called Hush. And I'd open it up, and it looked unlike any comic that I'd had at that point, because my stack, you name it, books were very limited because I didn't have access to it. Amazon was not really a thing then. But the funny thing is, you know how they split, it seems like for the longest time they split it into 2 volumes.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I ever got volume 2.
Oh, that's all I had was volume 2. So I didn't see the 2 on there. I just saw it said Batman, and it was a hardcover, and I opened it up, and the art looked amazing, and I'd taken money with me, so I'm like, that's mine. I'm going to read it. And so then I'm just kind of like, they make such a big, like, it picks up, volume 2 picks up in issue 6, where they're at the opera. So you can imagine as I'm reading it, and this guy gets shot and killed, and then it's supposed to be such a big deal. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. Yeah, I don't know who this is. I don't like nothing. And then I couldn't find volume 1. So all I had for Hush, I just was that back volume 2. Till Amazon became a thing, and then I realized there was another volume, and I ordered it, and then I've reread. But anyways.
Yeah, because if you were trying to get it before, at the time before it was really available in the hardcover or whatever, those single issues got kind of expensive. They still aren't that cheap.
Yeah,
right?
I have a few, but just by luck, pure luck of grab bags and stuff that had some in there. But overall, yeah. So to sum up and not go on too long, I just think that it's a really fun story. I think it's one of definitely top 3 best looking Batman books ever made. And yeah, it's just a fun story. So in hearing that they were going to make this an animated movie, I was really curious because they can't make a 300-page story fit into an 80-minute movie and fit everything in there without it feeling overstuffed and a little just too much, way too much. So cuts would have to be made. What are they gonna cut? And then how angry are people gonna get because they cut stuff? Yeah.
What do you think about Hush the book, Eric?
First of all, it's my second favorite story. And every time I read a comic book, I always picture it on screen. I'm a movie guy, as you guys know. So I always try and read it and then say, okay, how would this act out as a movie? And to me, it's perfect for that. So I've always enjoyed the story. The material in it is very adult. So yeah, as Batman stories go, it's my second favorite story.
Wow.
Ever. Yeah.
What's it behind?
Long Halloween.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Okay.
So
there you go.
to both the Loeb books. Oh, well, there you
yes.
go. Long Halloween.
Yes.
That's my favorite of any Batman of all time.
I think
we need to do
Long Halloween.
I know, right? We need to do a podcast on that.
Yeah, I think it's mine too.
Oh snap!
Yeah, that would be a good podcast.
Just the 4 of us agreeing.
Hey guys,
the 4 of us
Halloween's
agreeing on a story
up
for an hour and a half or so.
Yeah.
No, we'll just take through. All right, page 1.
No, I mean, there's certain issues I have with both of them, but overall,
yeah, I
think they're well done.
Yeah, well, that's what I was talking about when I talked about it. Just from an experience standpoint, it's a fun experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the story can get a little difficult if you're not paying attention.
Yeah. But you got to be engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to engage, you have to pay attention, but I think even with some of it, it's the storytelling doesn't always make it super easy to follow exactly what's happening, and it's not because the story is extra deep. I think there's such a level of fun with this book that I don't want to get down in the do you like what Tom King's been doing rabbit hole, but for me, Batman hasn't been all that much fun, and I reread the book before I watched the movie, and I'm like, dang, this was just fun. It was kind of big. So you reread and loud.
Hush before you watched the movie.
Yeah, it's just kind of big and loud, and to the earlier point, kind of like Michael Bay Batman, big, loud, fun, sort of pop culture Batman in an accessible way on some levels and a little bit not as accessible on others, but it's up there for me too. It's definitely a top 5 Batman book for me,
but it's still a little dense too in terms of content, in terms of both writing and art, right? This is when Jim Lee was drawing the treads in the bat shoes, you know what I mean? It was super detailed. There was just something about it that made it feel a little bit more, well, a lot more premium than your standard twice a month comic book that we have nowadays, right?
Yeah, in the art's obviously different stylistically from the Batman we got with Greg Capullo in New 52, but it has a similar feel to me where it's like super kinetic. You get more of like the splash pagey sort of staged, photo shots in Hush, but like the art feels like it's at a higher premium. It's got its own voice, its own style, and it stays consistent through the run. And as much as I like a lot of what DC is doing now, I think where you see different artists jumping in and out of titles depending on the issue, it throws me. That's one of the things that throws me a little bit on Justice League, even though I'm loving that series. To have a writing team, of the caliber, of Jeff Loeb's caliber, I should say, creative team with Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee for this entire run, like that makes it feel like a premium format story, and it was told, issue by issue, right, in Batman.
Yeah, and even back in the day, do you guys remember the arc that immediately followed Hush in the Batman book? Beep, boop,
immediately?
Beep, boop, boop,
no.
Beep, boop. That would be Broken City.
Oh yeah,
Broken City, the Azzarello Risso book, and that was like a longer arc too, self-contained, really like focused creative team. So I mean, that was probably worth rereading too.
Did they go right into Under the Red Hood after that, or was there something else?
I don't know how. I mean, it wasn't right after, but it was in that same era.
Right.
You'd have to look it up. I think there was other stuff before that. There was like the Scare Beast stuff and stuff like that.
Right.
Like,
yep.
Yeah. Because and that's kind of the biggest. Okay, so like in the Hush story, you have a couple of big things that happen, right? Like it's like the first continuity, because in the continuity in Hush, in the comics, it's where Jason Todd is still dead. Yep. Tim Drake is Robin. You have Huntress. This is the first instance, I believe, where Killer Croc is actually turning into a real crocodile person, with claws and big teeth and stuff. Like he was more like a monster for the first time in this, and that was kind of the first time that had happened.
So Hush ended in Batman 619, and Under the Hood started in 635. So like a year and a half after it ended.
Okay, so
Under the Hood started.
Yeah. So one of the big things in Hush is like, well, who is Hush and stuff like that, and part of the story. This is the month-to-month event thing. Like it was like it's like a TV show where that week's episode of the show is out, and then everybody talks about the show for a week or two or whatever until you have theories on what's going to happen in the next issue or the next month or whatever. And so that's kind of how Hush felt experiencing it month to month. And who is Hush? And oh man, what if it's his face is in bandages? Who could it be? It's probably Tommy Elliott. Like there's all these flashbacks. They just introduced this character in this story, so it's probably him. But like the speculation went rampant, right? Like, oh, what if it's Jason Todd? What if it's second Robin come back to haunt Batman? Like, what if he's still alive and stuff? And there were even little hints in the books, like in the first issue or whatever, right? Like where in the background in one of the billboards did it say something? I forget, but didn't it say Robin or something?
Oh, it said Robinson.
Right? Did it?
Yeah.
There was something on the billboard, on one of the billboards.
It was like
or
a
something.
building said Robinson, because I thought it was saying something about Robin at first, and then in another panel it's like Robinson. I know that's because I just reread the story too.
Yeah. So, and then it kind of did happen where the one issue had the great covers, the Jim Lee covers that had like the Jason Todd like skeleton stuff on the cover, and then and then Hush's bandages come off and they're in the graveyard, and oh my god, it's Jason Todd, but it turns out not to be Jason Todd, it's actually Clayface. But then they retconned it later in continuity to where it really was Jason Todd. Yeah, so but that reminds me of
like the early days of internet memes and comic books where like used to see, I remember, back in the early 2000s, used to see online places like comic books where everybody who dies comes back to life except for Jason Todd and Bucky, and then like within a short
and they're both
bad
back.
reviews, they're both back.
Yeah, Yeah, but poor Harold.
Harold,
he dies.
Yep.
He dies,
and
in
he
this.
had been gone for a little bit,
He was,
right?
I mean, he was there. I mean,
No
he was
Man's
there,
Land.
just not mentioned. Oh,
Right.
okay. Yeah, unfortunately, my boy Jean-Paul Valley Azrael doesn't get mentioned in Hush like at all. Although he's like definitely in continuity during that era.
Right.
And of course, this is way before Damien's even introduced or any of that stuff. So that's just kind of the era that those stories take place in. So they had kind of an interesting. That is the thing, is like this. I think probably more than a lot of the adaptations that have come before in this animated continuity stuff begs the question of like, well, how important is it to the adapting this material, whether it's adapt the story like it is or change it for the new continuity, and we can get into that a little bit more later, but talking about let's talk about the movie itself a little bit. Like they did change stuff, so it is in
Boy, did
they changed a lot of stuff. It seems like they wouldn't, but then they kind of did. As it gets more, the changes get more and more apparent clearly as the story goes on, and
but also it's funny because there's obvious changes, but yet I just think of it as like the spirit of the book is still intact,
right?
Because it's like this in the book featured this character and this character, whereas in the movie it's the same thing happening. Instead, it's this character and this character.
Yes, yeah, I can, yeah. And I think the closest comparison, adaptation-wise, I think in this animated continuity, not in the continuity, but in this animated series of films, would be Gotham by Gaslight. Like they took a book, they adapted it, they kept the spirit of the book, but they changed a bunch of stuff in the adaptation process to kind of make it work within the confines of a 80-minute. 82-minute movie, but this one had the extra heavy lifting. Well, it had two more things. It had to adapt it into an 80-minute movie. Hush is also arguably, well, probably not arguably, it's a more popular, more well-known story, and they did make the decision to, we talked about this earlier, they did make the decision to conform this and make this part of the ongoing animated continuity.
Yep.
Which
right. Somewhat similar to what they did
with the death and
return
of Superman. Yes,
exactly.
And that, I think that is a good example of like, well, okay, you can still, that probably gave them the go ahead to maybe try this, because with those stories I was like, how those are such 90s stories and they're of their time. How can you like take that and adapt it into like what this new continuity is? But then they actually did it and it was pretty good. But I was pretty interested in Hush because a lot of that stuff's been done. A lot of the characters had been used in earlier stories. So I was wondering if like some of the action beats would seem like redundant because they'd already kind of done some of that stuff. And then the character makeup is completely different. Like, okay, so are you going to have Tim Drake? Are you going to have Huntress?
Right.
And we got the answers to all
Oracle,
that stuff.
right? Yeah.
Or yeah, exactly. Harold.
Yep.
Harold, no.
Yeah.
Yep, no Harold.
Yeah, so
I think
it does beg the question of how important all the individual pieces are versus the experience level and how the story makes you feel and what the story is about.
So I think the one thing where I kind of came around on this following, Death and Reign of the Supermen, and then now Hush. I think they're both stories that, do well with some familiarity to the characters. And, where before I said, I ideally wanted them to be sort of standalone takes. I think they actually do benefit from having familiarity with the audience, where some of this stuff weighs a little bit heavier if they are iterations of these characters that you have known and met and gone through some stories with already. And you think about where these stories came from. These weren't prestige format one-offs. These are right out of the pages of the monthlies. So I think that makes a ton of sense. My only quibble is I don't know that the New 52 animated verse is as, beloved as it is familiar. These movies are doing well. They're selling well. People have seen them. But I don't know that they're as beloved as the comic runs. Just, some of the choices have been a little bit off here and there in the costumes, which I was very, very happy that Hush sort of continued in the same way that Reign of the Superman got Superman back out of a New 52 era suit into something we were more familiar with. Hush did the same thing with Batman. So it kind of seemed like they're transitioning out of that aesthetic a little bit with these stories. Yeah. So a little bit of you're running in parallel a bit with both of those takes.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the cool thing about this, and I kind of came around on it too in terms of the storytelling approach. Like you said, it's like, well, the original Hush wasn't its own separate thing. They were, some of the things that were in place during that story were because of the continuity that they were handed as well. So it's almost like, well, you need to retell Hush, but you've got this continuity that you've got to deal with, and just use it to your, I mean, there's pros and cons, use it to your advantage, but they're using their continuity in the same way in film as they would have had to approach it with comic books. And I think that's kind of an interesting approach. And yeah, it worked for Superman. So I was interested to see how they would handle this. The thing about this is, though, like Lauer was saying about earlier, and in the comics, and we mentioned this, is one of the bigger, cooler early on reveal things is like, oh, Killer Croc, he's like mutated, he's kind of more of a monster now, and he's under Poison Ivy's spell, and he's one of the first things that Batman has to deal with. But that's just not present in this movie, and Killer Croc gets replaced with Bane. And if you listen to the commentary that's included with this, like they say, like, well, we already had kind of a Killer Croc beat in an earlier movie in the continuity, so they felt that it would be redundant to just do that again, and they swapped him out with Bane just so they could have something different. So I think that's kind of one of those examples of like, okay, well, and it didn't, and the story beats, to its credit, the story beats still works. It still makes sense.
Exactly. And
a lot of the things that are in the book, like, man, Croc he's a lot dumber than he's kind of, something's up with him. This is weird. It's not the same. Like, and Bane is a good, like, he works just as good with that kind of, what that part of that narrative needs to be. And other things like, I'm not too sure about Batgirl. It was fun to see her, and they did tease her at the end of Batman Bad Blood, and I was wondering how she would appear in later movies, but she kind of does just appear. Like, I thought there would be more of a plan, like a standalone Batgirl movie or something, but she just kind of shows up here, and instead of Huntress, she kind of takes Huntress's spot, and so Batgirl just kind of shows up, and she's in a couple of scenes, and then she just kind of vanishes from the story completely. Like, I was kind of surprised that she was there and then she's just kind of gone. Damian gets, like, what, one scene?
Good.
A cameo.
A cameo, yeah, at best. It was a good scene, though. It was
pretty funny.
It was a pretty good scene, though.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yeah,
Chuckled.
Like, the two things that impressed me the most about this movie is that because they did have to tell the whole story in 80 minutes, instead of focusing on, like, who is Hush and the mystery and all that stuff, they focused more on Batman and his relationships with people, like the Batman and Catwoman relationship was really well done in this movie, I thought. Mm-hmm. And they did a lot of heavy lifting in the screen time, and I really loved Batman and Nightwing in this movie.
Yeah,
that was that surprised me more than anything. Like, Nightwing's interactions with Batman, Nightwing's interactions with Alfred and Catwoman are just so good, so well done. And Nightwing is not an easy character to get the tone correct on, and I think that they really kind of nailed it on this one. And
yeah, it's easy. It's easy to whiff on him because way too often it's just like another Batman, or it is too far in the other direction where it's annoying and he's quippy McJokester, like Spider-Man, only out of character.
Right. And to your point, Garrett, I think the Metropolis detour works great in this movie because we have been we have met this Superman and Lois Lane and Lex Luthor before, and the history that they've had together over these past couple films, I think, did a lot of the heavy lifting so they can do more with the story in the limited screen time, because you've already kind of seen how you've already gotten used to these versions of the characters. And so I thought that I love the Metropolis stuff too, and Lex Luthor's camp, because the movie was answering my questions as I was going along. Like, Batman's getting information from Lex Luthor, and I'm like, well, Lex Luthor's being kind of nicer. He's giving Batman what he wants. But oh yeah, in that last movie, wasn't Lex Luthor like Lex Luthor was like part of, like, he shows up at the end in the post-credit scene with the super suit, and he's like ready to like be part of the Justice League. I'm like, why aren't they not talking about that? And then they absolutely do talk about that, and it makes total sense. Like,
well, and I even at the beginning, I was ready to like nitpick on, maybe a little bit more of a nitpick, but the characterization of Bane. I'm just like, Bane sounds like a dummy. What are they like? They've got.
I know, wrong. Like he's just complaining about money, and then they actually say, but Bane's usually more eloquent than this. I'm like, thank you, movie, for answering my question.
Well, you were right there ahead of me. You silly old movie, you. Did anybody think the Alfred's voice was a little bit like was he doing like an 89? Was this like the esteemed actor? Why am I blanking on his first name? Michael Goff.
I don't think so, because
the accent was just away. A little. Oh yeah, I know, it wasn't him, but like that felt like a little bit of the take, because when they were going through, and it's sort of Alfred's almost doing the Oracle role and is in the earpiece. I'm like, that is a different Alfred sound than I'm accustomed to in animation.
It threw me off. Like,
it was
kind of distracting.
I couldn't place. It felt like
it didn't roll off the ears as much as it did stand out. It did stand out to me too. Yeah.
But I think to the point we were talking about earlier, where some of these characters have swapped, but their role in the plot remained the same. That Bane, Killer Croc, Oracle and Alfred, Batgirl and Huntress. I think a lot of those were really sort of done fairly effortlessly with the characters that already exist in this continuity. I felt the highlight was a bit more on the Batman and Catwoman relationship, which tied into what's been going on in the comics. And some of those tweaks worked really well. Some of the larger ones for me did not work well at all. But overall, I think they did a nice job sort of capturing, the feel and intrigue. And I think aesthetically, I was impressed. So the animation felt really sharp, but the colors to me felt richer. And I watched this in 4K, and man, I just thought they did a very nice job with the animation. The colors in particular were really rich. And
the fight scenes, a lot of the effects were really good in the movie. Yeah.
And but from a color standpoint, you had the book has a lot of sort of oranges and greens and blues, and you get a little bit of purple in there. And I thought like the richness in the animation color in the movie kind of brought that feel out a bit more than I was expecting. So I was really surprised and pleasantly with that.
See, I think that overall, that's kind of my quote. Quote, unquote.
Yeah, you can just say it.
Is this a quote or not? Am I quoting myself?
Somebody said this. Ryan Lauer, he's a good man.
Thanks, Mom.
The animation was my biggest disappointment.
Oh, really? Man.
Gasp.
It didn't change much.
I don't think it's bad. It's just for a book that is so praised, because it's just such a... I try to think of the words to like describe it. It's such like a knockout.
Well, it's another. Jim Lee's art is another character in the story, and I think
exactly. And for this, it's like, here's your chance of a based on a story that stands out so much because the art's incredible. They're kind of just doing the same animation that they've been doing, and I'm like, I was hoping you'd do something slightly different.
Yeah, and that's a consistent critique with these movies, and it's not just this movie either.
Yeah.
Like we talked about Gotham by Gaslight, that wasn't Mike Mignola art or whatever, right?
No.
Or Killing Joke even. Like, it was kind of Bolland-esque, but not really.
Well, I'm curious,
how much... It's so hard to
Dark
ape
Knight
on
Returns
these guys.
worked. Dark Knight Returns worked.
That's what I was going to say, is I wonder how much more of an effort and cost and stuff it was for Dark Knight Returns, because in a way, like, that definitely fit along with their animation style, but yet it was also unique and fit the comic too.
Yeah, I think
that
Dark
was the
Knight,
influence. So
I think Dark Knight Returns is a little bit of a special snowflake because it was going to be its own thing, and Frank Miller's art style is a little bit easier to translate into animation than pretty much all these other things that they've been trying to adapt.
Well, yeah, like you said, Jim Lee with the treads on the Batmobile tires.
Yeah, they couldn't do that.
I remember there's one shot in the book where I almost wanted to stop and count like the treads again on the bottom of his boot, because they're like every single one was defined, and it'd be really difficult. And that's why I called out the color in particular, because the animation style was the same. I still do not like this Bruce Wayne character design. Like, I think it's goofy through the face and through the hair, but I just, for some reason, and maybe I hadn't watched, I should go back and see what other versions I bought. Maybe I hadn't watched the previous iterations or the previous entries in this series in 4K, because I was really, really blown away by the color. That might just be this was the first time I watched it in 4K, I guess. Maybe. I don't know if that's true or not.
Mm-hmm. I will say that, like, out of all the Batman centric movies in this continuity, this one definitely felt the most. It felt the most. I don't want to say familiar, but it felt like the most cinematic. Like it's the most. It's Batman. It's in Gotham. It's not like the gimmick is Hush. They're retelling Hush. It's not like, like Bad Blood, where it's not, Batman's not like the main focus, right? Like that one, it's more on the Bat family. It's like a Battle for the Cal kind of movie or whatever. Or Justice League Dark, like Batman's in it, but it's more about the Justice League Dark, or, I mean, I think it really worked for me that way. It's like, if you want a Batman movie like that, those are things that are like catapulting this one above some of the others for me. But before we get too deep into the discussion, we got an audio message from Rob Myers from Rob and Everyone Loves the Drake, a Tim Drake comic book podcast that I'm also a part of. So I thought maybe I would play that audio, and then we can use that as a springboard for the remainder of our discussion. Oh, but I should mention before I play this audio that there could be
spoiler.
Hello, Batman on Film. It's Rob from Rob and Everyone Loves the Drake comic podcast. Ryan had reached out to me since he knew I was a big Hush fan, as I currently own every version of Hush that has ever been printed, clear back from its original release in 2002. Reached out and said, hey, I know that you like Hush and you've got the action figures, and Hush is actually, the character Hush is my favorite Batman villain of all time. I like to put that out there. So with the animated movie coming out, he knew I was really excited about this, that it's getting its animated treatment. And I think a lot of us had wished, and now that it's out, but had thought that this was going to go in the vein of Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, Under the Red Hood, but it is part of the DC Universe animated New 52, and now kind of their rebirth-ish continuity here. So Ryan just asked for a couple of comments and then maybe a question for the BOFers tonight on the panel. I'm not entirely sure where I fall in line with this. As a film that is connected into this DC Universe animated films that started with Flashpoint and then got its proper send-off with Justice League War, following the New 52 kind of events and stories that they're telling, I think it works very well. It ties in. They make reference to the death and return of Superman and a couple other Batman films in this line of succession. As far as the Hush storyline, the question and the piece for this audio that I'm sending you guys, the Batman animated movie in this timeline, Bad Blood, is loosely based off of the Battle for the Cowl, where Dick Grayson becomes Batman because Batman's gone, and they bring in Batwoman and Batwing and all of that into that movie. where Dick and Damian are getting to partner up as Batman and Robin, which is also kind of like the pre-New 52 Batman and Robin title by Grant Morrison. So I went to that long explanation to say, what if Hush had the same treatment as Battle for the Cowl? Would this movie have been better suited as if it was called Batman Stay Quiet or Batman Silence is Golden, something, or some other line, or Dark Kept Secrets. I'm just like making up titles here off the top of my head. And then you would have watched this movie and went, oh, they're bringing in the Hush character. So being that the way the Hush villain is treated in this, and spoilers, I'm sure you guys have already talked about it, it's not Tommy Elliott, it is Edward Nygma the Riddler. So looking at it and extrapolating it that way, you can look at the Hush story that Jeff Loeb told and see where they pared things down. Because this movie runs pretty true to the Hush comic book up to a certain point. There's things with Ra's al Ghul's not there. Yes, my boy Tim Drake is not represented here. But as far as certain aspects, other than Bane being switched out for Killer Croc, there's moments in here that had me grinning from ear to ear going, oh, that's a moment from the comic book and that's a moment. So when you get to the very end of the comic book and you get to the very end of the movie, for me, it kind of works. You do have the moment with the Riddler knowing what he knows and the Hush character saying and doing the things that he wants to, I think. And you also have Clayface also playing a part in this like he did in the comics. Now, in the comics, that was the first hint and a taste that Jason Todd is alive. Even though that was a ruse, that would be a plot point that would be picked up by other creators of like, well, I wonder what if Jason Todd was alive. So I think that was a big thing that got to the core that I think probably should have been addressed here. But getting to the final pages of the Hush comic book and the dialogue that Batman has with the Riddler, it kind of makes sense in this animated universe. I don't hate the film. I actually really enjoyed with the story that it's telling, but I guess that is more of my question. Would this have worked better if they did not call it Batman Hush, that you could look at this as an animated Batman, whatever, insert title here, that we would have looked at it and go, oh, they brought in Tommy Elliott, and Hush, and they changed this part here and told their own story. But you can also look at it and go, should we expect, I want an adaptation beat for beat, note for note, page for page when we've already read the story? Are we just wanting to see the comic book move and be animated and go, oh, that's how I want the comic book to look in my mind? Or do you want to go into a movie being surprised? Does it undermine the villain of Hush? And I guess that's the other question I have with this animated universe killing off its villains. You go, well, they quote unquote killed off Hush, and more importantly, they killed off the Riddler. So does that mean we're not going to have any more Riddler character in any more of these timeline movies? So I guess that's my only gripe. If they wanted to kill off Hush, I would have not liked to have it done at the detriment of the Riddler character. So that's kind of my thought. I did enjoy the film. Is it exactly what I was hoping for? No. But am I disappointed in it? No, not at all. I think it looks really good. But again, when you're in this animated context, that they're following an aesthetic in a universe that's already existing. So to have it look like Jim Lee, if you wanted it to look like Jim Lee, then this movie needed to have been treated like The Dark Knight Returns. But in this context and in this universe, even look at the Death and Return of Superman. They took elements of Death and Return of Superman and did it, but told their own story. So because of that, I look at this animated universe as a cartoon series, and this is just the next weekly episode in that. So that's my quick thoughts here. Thanks for letting me chime in on this Batman on Film and being part of the Dad Gum Original. Take care, guys. Bye.
What the heck?
Curses!
What the heck? I mean, what do you mean it wasn't Tommy Elliott?
Anger.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Spoilers.
Jeepers.
Did I forget to mention I only watched the first 2/3 of the movie? God dang it.
Curses. You already said that.
I'm drunk.
You can have
I need another beer.
But that is the so that's
That's
good,
the big one.
That's the big one. I'm gonna.
It's a nice way to open it up.
myself about spoilers on that one. But yeah, so that's the big elephant in the room is that spoilers again.
Oh yeah,
you already know. I mean, Hush is the Riddler.
Okay.
In this film,
but in the book, isn't he kind of Hush?
Okay,
so
Jace. So
well,
okay,
Jace.
Let's back it up for a minute.
Let's back it up for a second. Okay. So in yeah, so in the book, in the original book, somebody that has just read the book, that's not me, explain who Hush actually is and what Riddler's involvement was in the book.
Garrett, let's tag team this biatch.
Yeah.
So you go first.
So that's fine.
Now we're out.
So essentially what we find out is that, it was really the Riddler that was sort of masterminding some of the stuff and working with Tommy Elliott. So Edward Nygma went to Tommy Elliott. Tommy Elliott's mother was sick and presented him with an idea of how she could be healed via the Lazarus Pit, which was the same way that the Riddler had been healed. So that stays the same. But the two of them together sort of hatch this plan. I think they call it like the Hush Protocol or something. I can't remember exactly how they refer to it, but you find out that it sort of was the Riddler that was kind of
as the
mastermind,
ultimate mastermind.
Yes, and working with Hush, but Hush himself was Tommy Elliott. That was Tommy Elliott with the bandaged face and the nines. So I mean, it's not totally far off. But it is a change. Laura, is that ringing true for you?
You damn right. I even just opened up the book to look, and like what you said, I think it's awesomely done in the book, and like it's one page of back and forth between Batman and Riddler of like question answer through it all, kind of like helping you fill in the questions that the reader had of kind of like, wait, what? How did this blah blah blah?
Yeah.
Riddler's the mastermind, and Tommy Elliott's kind of like the not a puppet because he has more of a voice and stuff than that.
Tommy Elliott is like the Dark Knight Rises Bane to like the Riddler's Talia.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good.
Here, the Riddler died better than Talia did in that. But But yeah, so that changes that we said at the beginning of the podcast. It's kind of like in spirit, the Riddler kind of was Hush. Well, here in the movie, the Riddler is Hush. So it's not deviating too far from it, but definitely it's different.
Yeah, I think where I had issues with it. Well, okay, one last thing on the comic. It was sort of a tag on, like it was sort of a final twist. Little epilogue that you had to be like you had to be paying attention and you're like, oh my gosh, what? Like it just sort of unsettled you at the very end of the story that you thought had been tied up rather neatly and cleanly. In the movie, I didn't hate it. I thought it felt a bit gimmicky because, as we've said, this is one of the more well-known Batman stories. Outside of, comic fandom, I think people, some people, probably not a lot, but a lot of people would be familiar or have heard of Batman Hush, just because, Hush was in the Arkham games. It's crossed over here and there, and it was in the pop culture when it came out, a little bit in the zeitgeist. So it's fine. It's just fine. I thought it made the inclusion of the Tommy Elliott character at all sort of weak in retrospect, but it was included. It seemed like it was a twist that simply existed to be a twist and to pull the rug out of the viewers that were knowledgeable and had already read the book and thought that they were tracking with what the story was doing. It was
it's just there to be a red herring.
Yes, exactly, and that's where it felt flat for me.
Yeah, but for me too, because it's like, is it because Hush? Does it work? Question mark. Because, or did they try this because I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why they did it. I mean, it's kind of echoing, again, Gotham by Gaslight, where they're like, well, we can't just have the brand new character that we just introduced in this movie also be like the main bad guy. And people that have read it before are going to know. So we're going to shake it up a little bit. It's an adaptation or whatever. I think that was easier to get away, and they made it Gordon, but it was easier to get away with because it is an Elseworlds thing, and it's not as well known. It's like, Jack the Ripper in that is not as a name villain, as Hush would be. So it's almost like, well, what if they made I don't know, what if they made a straight up adaptation of some other Batman story, like
Digital Justice,
like not Digital Justice. Come on now, it's like something like Nightfall or something, and they're like, oh, here's Azrael, but it's not Azrael, it's like the
Jim
Joker.
Gordon.
Yeah, like does this shortchange the people that wanted to see Tommy Elliott Hush like get his due in animation?
I think that's a fair question. To me, it worked better for me that it wasn't Tommy Elliott, because I thought he got shortchanged in the movie, period. Like
that might have been your heads up, that there might not be much to that. Because for me, I'm watching, I'm like, okay, well, is he just kind of playing? Is there more to it?
Yeah,
but
he had a quick scene at the bar at the beginning. Him and Bruce in the hospital, and then he barely said anything at the opera, and then he's dead. And it's like, granted, a comic is different medium and everything, but he was a much larger part of the story in the flashbacks to build the relationship.
They cut all the flashbacks out.
So in this, it's kind of like when he was done, it kind of felt like, well, he didn't really impact the story at all. I didn't feel like
they did do something smart when he's leaving the hospel.
Dude, I knew you were going to mention
his face when he walks in, and he gives that look, right?
That's what I was wondering. When he's leaving the hospital, he gives like a smirk, like a I know what's going on.
That looked the most like a Jim Lee panel from Hush too. I thought.
Yeah,
I looked the closest.
I was like, well, what did that even mean now? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It was to throw you off, to throw people to think, okay.
Don't you ever leave a room talking to a friend and smirk?
Yeah, but it only works if it still makes sense after the fact, and it doesn't for me.
That's why in my mind it only plays to the audience that's read the storyline, and that if this is like sort of the popular storyline that they think everyone's read that's going to see this movie, that's the only way it plays. But if you are
good, twists still hold up the second time through.
Exactly,
though. That's the thing.
Exactly. And I'm sure there are people who watch and enjoy these movies that have not read Hush, in print or in digital, that it just, I don't know. It'd be interesting to have one of those people on the show to talk to them and see what their take is. But, Eric, you mentioned earlier, huge movie fan, and you said, when you're reading comic books, you picture them as movies. Mm-hmm. How did it play for you as someone, this is one of your top 2 books and you love movies? How did that change from page to screen work in your world?
I was disappointed. I wanted Tommy Elliott to be Hush. I mean, that's what I was used to, and that's what I was looking for. That's probably part of it. Like, I was looking for it to be that. So when the twist came, I kind of sat there and I'm like, it didn't work for me. It just didn't work for me.
Did you watch it a second time?
I did. I watched it a second time.
Did anything change? As far as, like, you feel, now that I know it's not him.
When I watch it the second time, I tried to put in the scope, okay, I know what happens. Yeah. So let me watch it just as someone watching it, not knowing the story, just watching the film in the continuity from the previous films that obviously this is in. So I tried to put all that other stuff out, and I was watching it, and still I felt I couldn't escape that part. Like, I felt cheated because I'm like, that's not, to me, this isn't Hush now. And so back to Rob's question from the thing.
Like, would it work if it was like Batman,
silence,
be quiet, silence Batman, curses Batman.
Batman, the quiet place.
Yeah.
Maybe if they tweaked the title, I would feel differently. Like, sometimes you have movies that are inspired by books and they change things, obviously. And so something like that, like if they had maybe the title's a little bit different and they tweaked your expectations. Because let's be honest, this movie is made for people who have read Hush.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I've read Hush about 394 times. Okay, I know that panel by panel.
Yeah, so you have that. So we all have this preconceived notion of what the story is, and now they changed that. So to us, to me anyway, it's not so much Hush anymore. It's Hush adjacent, or like Hush,
Yeah, like this is what I said for Gotham by Gaslight. It's like a second pillar. Like it's another way to get an experience about a story that's kind of like it, but it's not like it erases the book. No. And it's just another experience to have. And I think as far as these adaptations go, I still think Dark Knight Returns is like the best case scenario where it's separate, it's an adaptation, they still had freedom, they still did what they had to do to change things, but they also were able to emulate the art style, and they had 2 full movies to kind of really get all the major story beats across. And for Hush, that might have worked a little bit better, but with within the confines of, you have to tell it one movie, 180-minute movie, within this continuity, I kind of see why they would have the questions that they did of like, well, how can we even, I see why they went the way they went instead of trying to like squeeze it all into one story, but
they should have just added a question mark and Batman Hush. Left it at that, and then people were like,
"That's a fair swerve."
Wait, what?
The beats, like you guys said before, the beats are still there. You still have
it is. Beat. It is. It's almost like All-Star Superman in a way, where like you're watching and you're like, oh, that's this issue, that's that issue, and it's kind of
plot mechanics are there.
Yeah, and then when it works up until the point where it's like, oh, I'm Hush, where there's like, I'm Hush. You're like, what? Right. And then it just kind of does its own thing for 20 minutes.
So we talked about some of the replacements. Like, what did you think? Like Lady Shiva instead of Roz, and
that worked because you've had her in the story in the continuity before, and she's really only there to
I forget what'd she do.
She just showed up and let you know that there's something going on with the Lazarus pits, and then you, because I was in the back of my head the whole time. I'm like, okay, well, what is up with the Lazarus pits? And they just kind of drop it. Batman says he'll look into it, but he doesn't actually. It doesn't ever get brought up again until the end of the movie, and Riddler reveals like that he's used it because it just wasn't a focus. But they had to present it so they could pay it off.
And what did you think about like Catwoman actually pushing Lois off the roof?
It's a Catwoman thing. I can see that happen. So what happened in the book?
Pretty similar. I think. Now I'm double checking it. I think it was played fairly straight. Like it wasn't. I don't remember.
She was on the flagpole. I think she's on a flagpole, and I think she.
No, she struggles. They're like having a scuffle, and she struggles and she falls. Like she's not. Catwoman doesn't push her. She just kind of falls off the roof.
Which, given the end of the movie, Catwoman pushing her, this kind of like, I don't know. It kind of fits. I think.
So.
Yeah. Like it worked. I mean, it made interesting tension between Batman and Catwoman. Like Batman has to kind of back her up to Superman, where he's like, "Yeah, I had faith in you, that you would catch him and stuff."
It'd have been great in the movie if before Catwoman pushed Lois, she said, "I'll help you find your rocks," and then just threw her off the roof, and there she goes.
Yeah.
In the comic, it's actually Lois that's kind of got some like spunk to her and throws an elbow into Catwoman's rib cage.
Yeah.
Catwoman,
you know what's interesting is go ahead.
Yeah, Catwoman like just responds, opens her arms and she falls. Yeah, it's not a push.
You know what's interesting in this movie is that you do have Poison Ivy controlling a really dumb Bane.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
One of those writers are like, listen, no, Batman and Robin, they had it right, okay?
They
had it right. This relationship
no
works.
one appreciated it, and we're bringing it back. We're taking it back.
It was smart.
Now, is this in continuity with Suicide Squad Hell to Pay?
I don't remember.
Or is that one separate?
Because he referenced and he told her, "Your Suicide Squad."
Suicide Squad, Waller's in this, and Harley Quinn's in this.
And the Waller design, I think, was a bit different.
Okay.
Like, you sort of get your different Wallers, and sometimes she's a little bit more, how I'm used to seeing her. Yeah, a little bit heavier set, a little bit older. And this was sort of like, again, New 52 aesthetic, like younger, thin Waller. And I thought Hilda Pay, she was not quite that.
I don't remember. I saw it once. I liked it, but I almost completely forgot about it.
It's my favorite thing on podcasts where someone asks like a good, relevant question and no one has an exact answer.
No one has an answer.
I wish I had. God,
you know what?
Geez.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I think that sounds familiar. It's right-ish, from my recollection.
That scene in the movie captures the same spirit of the book. Of instead of Killer Croc, you have Bane. You have Waller watching that one, and that one breaks out.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like another case of same situation, different characters, still works.
Right. And what about like the Scarecrow moment? That's kind of in the same
that
vein
one too. I think I was sitting there before that scene even, it popped into my head of like, hold on, Scarecrow's on the cover. When is he popping in?
Yeah.
And then knowing that, in the book it's Huntress and Catwoman, and then they switch it up in Nightwing, though it's really brief, but still it's kind of like, woohoo. There's like another thing from like in the book, like their version of what happened in the book now in their movie, and it worked for me. I liked it.
Yeah.
Woohoo! So, go me.
We didn't have any crypto either.
No, that's okay. He's going to be in Titans. He's going to get his live action screen time.
That's true. We get live action crypto.
Would you guys think of? We talked about aesthetic choices a little bit. What'd you think of seeing Batman in the old blue and gray, no yellow?
I loved that. No, it wasn't yellow. So to me, I thought like, so to Rob's question, like I thought, okay, so are they trying to like move away from the New 52, or was it partly because of like, well, we want Batman to look more like Jim Lee, blue and gray Batman from the story, so they came up with a decent excuse to have him swap costumes.
Well, what was his costume like for the opening? Like his first costume?
I mean, it's this is what it was like in the Death of Superman stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then
New 52-ish.
I just feel like with Alfred's of his quote unquote explanation of it was, this one has extra padding and blah blah blah, and then it was the Jim Lee suit, and I just thought for us nerds that's like that's neat sort of reaction.
That was my nerdy reaction to it. I'm like, oh, cool.
I did the same thing.
We all did it. That's neat.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's at the end of Reign of the Supermen, and you get Superman in the original Rebirth costume. I was like, oh, thank goodness, I don't need all the piping and the collar and the darker tones to the colors. Like, this looks awesome. So I think like having that costume for Superman and Superman being in this movie, I doubt it played a huge factor. It feels like they're just sort of continuing to evolve this storyline of movies away from where it had its inception. But I wonder how odd that would look to have Superman in something resembling more of his classical costume and have Batman in that more New 52-ish suit. And plus, it gets closer to the aesthetic of the book. And another example of where I think this movie was really designed for people who have read the book.
Yeah. And speaking of that, one really pivotal moment that I always remember from the book was Batman. What happens between Batman and the Joker in Hush, and it was pretty monumental and violent and in the book. So I'm curious to get your guys' opinions on this. I thought Harley Quinn was pretty good in this. Like the voice, I'm not sure who voices her in this, but
trivia.
She was pretty good.
Did you catch what the names were of her hyenas, her babies?
Oh yeah, weren't they Three Stooges?
Three Stooges, right?
They sure were. Larry, Moe, and Chimp.
Yeah,
Curly's better,
Curly.
but anyways.
But the Joker's voice was really cool in this. I thought it kind of matched the the Jim Lee aesthetic to me. Like, it kind of worked for me. Although I thought it was kind of it was a big jump between from Batman. Like in the book, you have months and months and issues of like Batman getting worn down and getting more like stressed out with what's going on with Hush, and it makes sense that he snaps and almost kills the Joker. But in this, it feels kind of fast to me.
Yeah, you get
and he's just like
quick.
Goes from 0 to 60. I'm gonna kill the Joker now. Yeah.
Yeah, that felt a little bit off for me too. I was like, whoa, we got here awfully fast. Like, and it is a it's kind of an extended scene of him just like really beating the crap out of the Joker. Then like, I'm going to strangle him for a very long time. I think in the book, Gordon actually fires a shot, like gives
he grazes his arm,
right?
His arm and one of his ears.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was a lot. That was.
And
a
in
lot.
the book, you have Catwoman and Harley interference. You don't have that in the movie.
I think it would have worked more for me, like I said earlier, if we'd had like one more scene maybe with Bruce and Tommy. Then it would have felt a little bit more like rage because of his reaction, where just because we've all read the comic, we understand it. But otherwise, I think some people could watch it and kind of feel like this is excessive.
Kind of came out of nowhere. Someone asked. It was Hynden Walsh that voiced Harley in this, which is funny because Tara Strong's actually in the movie as one of the reporters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked for me, the just how quick he got there, because I just, the history between the characters. So, like, I just put my mind there. I go there right away. I said, well, yeah, he's kind of Batman probably wants to do this deep down all the time.
Yeah. But like in the book, it's building up. It's building up, and they've had these flashbacks in the book too, and then it makes Batman think about not just their history, but the history of Joker killing or shooting Barbara Gordon and killing Jason Todd, and so like all these major continuity moments are coming to a head there, and that stuff's not really, that's stuff that's just not part of this continuity at all in this movie. So some of that context is kind of taken out, like that history between the characters.
Yeah, that tension isn't there because we don't have that here. So yeah, I mean, I see why you guys have a problem with it. It's not, it's not like I'm like, no, you're wrong. But
shut up, Eric.
Just for me, it wasn't difficult jump for me to make that he wants to, kill the Joker.
But yeah, I mean, so there are issues I had with it, but I still liked the portrayal. I still liked the Joker voice. I still liked the Joker laugh. I liked the way he just kind of like got his little extra cameo there at the end when he's like talking, interacting with Batman while he's fighting and getting beat up by Clayface. Like, that was cool.
Yeah, I liked most of the voice work on this. I don't really have issues with any of it. I like Jason O'Mara as Batman. I know a lot of people don't, but
I've always liked him. I've always liked him as Batman. I think he grows on you. Like every time you hear him, I think he's pretty solid.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I think he does a nice job.
Yeah. I enjoy. Yeah. So I thought like all the voice work was good. I didn't have any issues there. Overall, the movie was good. I enjoyed it. But again, it was a little disappointing. That Hush wasn't the Hush I'm used to.
Yeah. So like, I guess we can go around and do some final thoughts. I don't know if I want to do a Rick Shoe ranking, but maybe a grade. Maybe a grade. I think for me, like, I think it's a net positive that this is, after watching it, it's one that I immediately wanted to watch again.
Yeah.
There's a lot going for it in terms of the story, the adaptation, the visuals, and that damn twist. Like, I don't know if I like it yet. It's too soon. And for me, that's kind of a good thing, because I'm not content just to be like, okay, that's it, and I just put it on the shelf and whatever. It's one I want to watch again and explore again, and I think that's a good thing, really. Just like whenever you see like a like you see a movie like Dark Knight Rises or BVS, and you see echoes of other stories that you've read, and you kind of want to dissect it a little bit. I think that's still present here, maybe not to that degree, but I don't know if I like the twist, and I think that's fine for now. It certainly is never going to be a replacement for the graphic novel, or it just kind of changes what this is, as a adaptation, as a thing that has Batman Hush on the name, for better or worse. I'm not sure which one of those it is yet, but I'm happy to keep watching it a little bit more to see like what I think overall. Like, but it was definitely a choice, and they kind of went for it. And have the Riddler be
grades out to,
and I think that grades out
incomplete.
to a B question mark.
Okay,
incomplete.
Man.
Ryan Haas says Batman: A Quiet Place. B.
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 I'm Ron Burgundy.
Man,
I liked Batman Hush. I'll go next.
Go ahead, Lauer.
I liked it. I think I actually kind of liked it a lot. The changes, as we've discussed, they didn't bother me.
Like we didn't actually discuss them.
That we quote unquote.
Yeah.
This is
another quote.
discussed.
Quote
Yeah,
Hush.
we quoted
Let him finish.
We quoted a lot. We quoted a lot there. But the characters cut, it didn't bother me. The ones that were cut, ones playing limited roles still kind of worked. I think this was a good, like I was kind of thinking Under the Red Hood changes, but no, that one made a story that was okay better. This didn't necessarily make it Hush better because Hush is already good. But I think your Gotham by Gaslight, that's a good example of they just made changes to where it's like, I have two versions of Hush now to enjoy. And though I think also in saying for like people that love Hush and really want to see Tommy Elliott in the mask, though that didn't bother me, I got to think of what if someday they do make The Long Halloween into a cartoon movie, my favorite Batman story. And what if they make changes? Would I end up having like a negative reaction to that? Or would I be very like, oh no, it's fine, I've still got the book. But in considering all that, overall just watching the movie, I liked it quite a bit, and I will give it a B+! Exclamation. Not a question mark.
Garrett.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you on the B+. I've got a little bit more of a negative response to the twist, and not that it is the twist itself. I think how they executed the twist, how they set it up, character choices that were made that seemed sort of frivolous or throwaway in light of the twist. Like it's not what they did. I think it's how they got there that bugs me a little bit, but. I thought the animation was very good. I thought the voice work was strong. I think they did a nice job with a long story that spanned a ton of issues, capturing the spirit of it and getting it into a 80-minute movie, which I really wish they'd start getting away from or do more two-parters. You could have done that with Hush, but I wasn't like upset when it ended. I didn't feel like, man, that was crammed together in too short, outside of the twist and some of the things you would have included to get to Tommy Elliott being the villain from a flashback standpoint that we mentioned. I didn't really feel like anything was super lacking. So I found it to be thoroughly enjoyable, if still annoying at the twist as a previous reader. I still would like to know if non-readers of the storyline have that same feel. I think there might be a little bit of stickiness there, but it's the positives outweigh the negatives for me. I think it's a B+.
Nice. And you know what? I think if you buy the physical copy of the film, there's a little slip in there with a survey about like, what'd you think about Hush? I haven't taken that yet. I wonder if any of the questions have anything to do about such things.
What if it says in there, like you open it and it says,
survey. What'd you think about the Riddler being Hush?
That was crazy, huh? I bet you guys didn't think we were going to do that. Oh man, mark below.
Boom.
One last thing I want to hear what Eric has to say. I just hope this isn't sort of something that the DC animated studio like thinks is their niche. Like, here's what we'll do. We'll take the story, and then we'll have a crazy twist, and it will throw off. We'll get everybody who's read the book and loves the book to buy it, but then we'll change it in a big way.
Because this is the second time they've done this. That is one of my points I wanted to bring up.
DC animated folks, don't make this your thing. I enjoyed this one. I'm not mad I spent my money on it in any way, but if you do this to me the third time...
Yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't fool me again. You know what I mean?
Quote.
You know what I'm saying? Quote. George W. You know what I mean? So
you gotta fool me another time.
Yeah. So like they did it for Gotham by Gaslight, where it's like there was a twist, and now we changed it, and now it's not the same story, and they've done it again with Hush. Like, yeah, definitely. Like, I get why they're doing it, but maybe don't do it again, or don't do it for a while. Yeah. Please don't make a Batman Nightfall adaptation and make Azrael like not Jean-Paul Valley or something. Well, please don't do that.
This is the last solo Batman animated movie for
a while,
2021 at least.
Ugh, yeah. See,
my 6-year-old went through this phase where he really liked pirate jokes. And the first pirate joke he told me, it wasn't funny, but it was cute. And pirate jokes are, it's something you can say, hey guys at work, like, listen to this terrible joke.
What are the punchlines?
Yeah, right, exactly. And then he told me the second pirate joke. And I'm like, oh man, this one's bad too. Hey bud, let's not get too caught up in these pirate jokes. Well, 2 weeks later, I heard all the pirate jokes. DC animated movies, don't let this be your pirate joke. I'm with you. Just don't run it into the ground with these fake out twists.
Yeah, it gets old, right? Like anything else, it gets old. It gets old fast. So kind of like me. But anyway.
Not with your smooth baby skin. What are you talking about?
No, for me, it's probably a B-.
What?
No, I can see
and only because of that, of the twist, really. That
holds it back for you.
I was into the movie. I was like, yeah, this is great. And then as soon as they killed him, I was like, well, that's what, and it's gonna, and like, you're going to put all things into your head. And then I was like, really? Like, you get to the end and you're like, really? That's what they did? So
it's not a good pirate joke.
Yeah.
You're thinking, okay.
So I enjoyed the animation. I enjoyed the voice work. I thought the story in the continuity it's in is fine. So as watching it from that standpoint, it's probably a little bit better than a B-. But because of my own personal expectations, I'm giving it a B-.
This is your grade, okay? This is yours.
You own that grade, Eric.
Yeah. I was going to do a flimsy B, but Rick has the
trademark.
Flimsy B monopoly.
You can't out flimsy Rick Shue, okay?
I cannot. out flimsy Rick. So, and I wouldn't want to.
No.
I wouldn't want to.
No.
So yeah, so a B- for me.
Cool. Well, there you have it.
Neat.
Batman Hush. Definitely pick it up and watch it though. Like it's good to watch. It's good to analyze, as we have done, as you have heard, quote unquote.
Have you been spoiled?
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob Myers.
Yeah, Rob Myers.
We're not having you on any other podcast ever again.
No, I'm going to edit myself saying spoilers.
Spoilers.
That's what I want to do it.
We need to record a drop for Lauer doing that. So
we'll do that afterwards.
I can't wait. I need to start practicing.
But yeah, I think that's good. So like, there you go. BOF episode 149. Watch Hush and let us know what you think. We'll be back sometime in the future for episode 150 and beyond. So
sometime.
Let's do some plugs and get on out of here.
I'll go just because I'll go because I've it's almost fantasy football season. I know Haas is excited.
No.
And that means my other
not at all.
The other show that I'm on, What Are the Odds? Fantasy Football, is kicking off into high gear. So if you obviously if you probably like Batman, if you're listening to this, if you're one of the very small crossover members of the audience that enjoys Batman and fantasy football, I'd love for you to check us out. We're at WATOFFB on Twitter. What Are the Odds? FFB.com is the website. And please follow me on Garret, GARRET, WATO on Twitter. And I am reviewing Justice League. It's a great run on Justice League. Continues to be very entertaining.
Snyder's Justice League?
Yeah, Snyder / Tynan's Justice League.
Nice.
Depending on what issue, they're sort of trading back and forth on the writing duties. But it's a great run. There should be depending when you're listening, new episode review up or issue review up this week on the website, on the BOF site. So check me out there too.
Nice. Lauer, do you have a review of said movie up on BOF, or will you?
Well, I was going to say, to anybody that listens to this, and they find themselves laying in bed at 2 a.m. in the morning during the week.
Don't watch Boogie Nights.
And they're watching Boogie Nights, and they think, I need somebody to talk to. Tweet at Final E, and he will respond with an in-depth analysis of Boogie Nights. But as for me, I did a written review for Hush. Some stuff may overlap from what we said, but then some stuff won't. You can quote me on that, unquote. And also the Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic crossover. The latest.
How's that been?
Fan-frickin-tastic. No pirate jokes present. And
my daughter is addicted to the animated movie.
Oh, man.
Batman Turtle Daddy. Watch Batman Turtles.
Hey, remember when I was going to talk about that movie with you guys?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways.
Then you pay your internet bill.
Yeah. But that review is also going to be up by the time that they hear this. And then I have a backlog of comic reviews. And on the Twitter, I just say Batman stuff, and I go after Eric with a pitchfork.
All the time.
Yes. And it's at Lauer_Ryan. Lauer spelled like lower.
Nice.
Someone has to hold Eric accountable on Twitter.
Yes, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible guy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's a great follow.
As Ryan Lauer so eloquently put, you can find me on Twitter at finally33 to discuss Boogie Nights and anything else. Anything else you want to discuss, you can find me there. I will with fellow Batman on Film reviewer Pete Vera. We will be reviewing Batwoman, this new CW show coming in September. So I'll check out for that. And we are gearing up in the same vein as Garrett's.
What are the odds?
We are gearing up for the second season of the Batman on Film Fantasy Football League that I am commissioner of.
What?
So I have another Twitter handle. It's at BOFFFL1.
Oh my god.
And you can interact with the Boffle.
Who
is a completely different person. I don't
God.
know him, but you can find him there. Sorry, not me.
The Boffle.
You find him. You can find the Boffle there, and he's a little arrogant.
Is there a Boffle head?
He's a real
Yes, you can find him there. So, yeah, that's what's going on with me.
Cool. Thanks for that update. So, so for me, you can follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. Of course, follow the Batman Podcast Network at BatPod Network. The other major thing that I have to announce is that if you've been following me or the Batman Podcast Network Twitter, you will have seen that the often teased and discussed and delayed Azrael podcast, the Agent of the Bat podcast, is actually now happening for real. Because we are trying to make that podcast's launch coincide with the landmark 100th episode of Robin Everyone Loves the Drake podcast, and we're trying to coordinate all that. So, the first episode of that Azrael podcast has been recorded and will be posted very soon. So if you want to go ahead and jump on the bandwagon and start following that show before it airs or gets released, follow them on Twitter at Azrael Podcast, and then you will be notified when that show becomes live. And I guess that wraps up today's episode. For Eric, Garrett, and Ryan, I'm Ryan. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
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 Hey now! You've been listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and the sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the BOF Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Want to advertise on the BOF Podcast? Go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film Con podcast. Follow Jet on Twitter at Batman on Film and on BOF's Facebook fan page at facebook.com/jet.batmanonfilm. Email Jet via jet@batman-on-film.com. I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I got this. We can do a couple takes. I'm here for a couple takes. This is all for free.
I should go, but I want to hear this.
So I'll say something to lead into it, and then you can do a couple takes.
Okay.
Oh, but I should mention before I play this audio that there could be
spoiler alert.
That's the worst. Spoiler alert. I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
All right. I got the kinks out. How's the bounce? I need critics. What do I need to adjust?
I need more trouble.
Oh, trouble?
There it is. It's the second one.
Got it.
You know what I would do? Start on the lower one, go to the higher one, and then drop the spoiler, and then just do like a bow, like you're coming out of it.
Bow. Spoiler
there.
Or spoiler before the bow?
Spoiler and then the bow.
Okay, you got it.
That's gonna be good.